In 1949, Pablo Picasso was in search of a new medium, one he could apply to any surface without preparation. He approached Henri Sennelier about the matter, and Henri obliged, and created this unique medium that falls somewhere between drawing and painting, eventually leading to the medium that we know today as oil pastels. And we'll use oil pastels in this lesson as we create an impressionistic image of a field of flowers. Hi there everyone, Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and oil pastels are a medium somewhere between drawing and painting. Of course, when we apply them to the surface, the process is clearly drawing, but our thought process needs to be more centered around the process of painting. For this lesson, we're going to be working on Canson mi-teintes pastel paper. We'll use the heavier textured side of the paper working on an orange surface. We'll also be using two different types of oil pastels. We'll apply most of the pastels using Sennelier oil pastels, but for more of the detailed parts, we'll use the harder oil pastels made by Sakura, the Expressionist line. So let's go ahead and dive right into this lesson. We'll start here with a deep red by just basically planning out the overall shapes of each one of the flowers. Since we're working with oil pastels, we're going to concentrate on the elements in the middle ground and foreground first, get them in place before addressing the background. You can see here that even though this pastel is nice and soft, we're still seeing some of the texture of the paper at this point. This is fine because we're going to layer multiple applications over the top. We'll continue working our way down the picture plane to the extreme foreground, and it's okay to deviate if you're working from a photo reference. Now that we have our shapes of our larger flowers in place, we can go in with a yellow-green, and this is a darker yellow-green. We'll start establishing some of the flowers and some of the individual pods as well. You'll notice that these marks are loosely and quickly applied. We're not going to be too concerned with the details. In fact, we're not going to be too concerned with the details throughout this painting. We just want to get areas of color in place on the surface. We'll continue working here in the foreground, quickly filling in our areas of green before moving on to addressing the sky. We'll start here with a light blue, starting at the top of the picture plane, quickly working our way down to the middle ground. And as we work, we'll define the shapes of each one of the flowers as we work around each one of the stems and pods as well. We'll work our way down into the foreground and add specks of blue showing through each one of the stems of the flowers. Since oil pastels are a looser medium, we need to concentrate on shapes of light and dark value. Instead of worrying about the details, we're only going to concentrate on shapes of lighter and darker value in order to create the illusion of light within the scene. We'll allow our viewer's imagination to fill in all the details on their own. We'll now begin with a very dark red, and this almost leans towards a brown, filling in all of the shadowed areas on each one of the flowers. Here again, we're going to use looser marks to describe the overall shapes of darker value that we see on each one of the flowers. Again, working our way from the top of the picture plane down to the lower portion of the picture plane. And since our light source originates from the upper left-hand corner, most of these shadows will exist on the lower right-hand portion. Now we'll begin addressing some of the highlighted areas and areas of middle value. Here again, we'll start at the top of the picture plane using a lighter version of red. We'll go even lighter, adding bits of pink and also warming up the color using bits of red-orange and orange. It's tempting to think about all of the details that you may see on your subject, but in this particular case, we're going for a more impressionistic image, meaning we're only concentrating on the shapes of color and value that we see. We can often blur our eyes a bit to help us see this more clearly. The direction of our stroke should be considered as well. Each mark that we make with the oil pastel can be thought of as a brush stroke, and the direction of this brush stroke can help us communicate the form of each one of the flowers to our viewer. without adding any details. We can adjust the colors to our heart's content, continuing to layer our original red and a variety of different red oranges, lighter pinks, and darker reds. As colors are added, mixing will naturally occur. Allow this to happen and embrace the painterly look that results. At this point in the process, I see that we need to add a bit more warmth, so we'll grab a warmer yellow and add a few highlights, primarily on the left side of each one of the flowers and on the top portion as well. To make our painting appear unified, we'll apply this to the majority of the flowers within the scene. Then we'll turn our attention to the foreground and begin adding a variety of different greens, using strokes that flow upward just as each one of the plants grows. We'll start over the top of our darker yellow green with a much lighter yellow green. We'll patiently pull up each stroke into the sky and into the space in between each one of the flowers. We'll also use a variety of different greens as well. In this case, a green that leans a bit more towards blue. And here again, we'll pull our strokes upward as each stem grows into the sky. Now we'll add some hints of shadow with a warm brown. This brown, as you can see, is a bit more neutral, having some hints of gray associated with it. You can also see that this additional contrast begins to create the illusion of many different stems. We have to remember that shadows and highlights also have color associated with them. We can't expect to lay down some black and some white and create convincing shadows and highlights. That would make our image look flat and unnatural. And when we're dealing with a color like green, we need to consider the colors that mix to create green. Green is created by combining yellow and blue, of course. Yellow is the warmer and lighter version of both of those colors, so it makes sense to use yellow in our highlighted areas. For our shadowed areas, we'll allow a little bit more of the blue to creep in to create more realistic shadows. Now we'll do just that, taking a darker blue, addressing some of the shadowed areas in the grassy area at the bottom of the picture plane. And here again, we'll pull strokes upward just as each one of the stems grows. Now we'll take a slightly darker blue than we used originally for the sky and start at the top of the picture plane, bringing down this darker blue, allowing some of the lighter blue to show through. And then on the lower portion, we'll use a lighter blue than the blue that we used originally, working our way up from the bottom to the top, creating a transition between light and dark in between. And as we continue these varieties of blues, we'll continue to define the edges of each one of the flowers, using the blue to define those edges. We can revisit the original blue that we used to ease this transition from slightly darker blue at the top to slightly lighter blue at the bottom. Now we'll begin bringing out some additional warmth in the grassy stems in the foreground, using a much lighter and warmer yellow-green. You can see here how the variety of greens is adding depth to the scene, variety in color, and also the illusion of space. Here again, we'll pull strokes upward, allowing the colors to mix as we go over the top of them. You can see adding a little bit of twist as you pull each mark up adds a little bit more control. We'll also add some highlights to each one of the pods that we've included in our scene. These highlights exist primarily on the left side of each one of the pods. We'll still allow some of the mid-tone of the green to show through. And then it's back to the foreground, pulling up additional strokes of this wonderful light yellow-green. We'll go even lighter and make these highlights much stronger with a very light yellow-green. Again, allowing each one of the greens that we've previously applied to show through in areas. You can see here how easily additional applications of oil pastel completely cover the applications underneath, allowing us so much versatility and allowing us to make mistakes and fix them if we need to. So it's important to be free with your marks, be loose with your marks, be deliberate, and don't be afraid. Now we'll switch over to the harder Expressionist pastels by Sakura. These pastels will allow us to make more deliberate marks and give us a little bit more control, since the pastel material itself is much harder. You can see here I'm using the very end or the tip of the pastel to create these defined lines. In fact, these pastels are so much harder than the Sennelier pastels that they will dig right into the surface, allowing you to create a variety of different effects. You can see here we're using this darker brown mainly to define some of the stems and also create hints of shadow here and there. We'll also use a brighter and lighter yellow-green of the same brand of pastel to pull up a few highlights here and there. We'll keep the highlights primarily on the left side of each one of the stems, and we'll also allow a little bit of shadow underneath each one of the flowers to create the impression of a cast shadow on the stem beneath it. Now our image is starting to come together, but we're still missing a few of those flowers here down on the lower part of the picture plane. So we'll add them using a couple of brighter reds. We'll use the original red that we started with, but we'll also use a brighter and stronger red-orange. And we'll also be sure to incorporate this color on some of the other flowers as well, where we've muted some of the colors by our multiple applications. These additional strong pops of color really start to bring the image together as the greens and the reds begin to vibrate off of each other. Then it's back to our light blue, again defining the edges of each one of the shapes that we've created. As you can see here, although we're using a very thick medium, we still are able to create the illusion of lots of details without actually drawing or painting any of the details. And then it's back to our dark brown again using the Expressionist oil pastel to add a few more hints of some more stems here in the foreground. And then of course, a bit more blue, adding some more shadows to our foreground. We'll add a few more highlights as well with a lighter yellow-green. And then a much brighter yellow-green. And after our finishing touches have been added, our oil pastel landscape of a field of poppies is complete. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're ready to go a bit deeper with your art instruction, why not check out our comprehensive membership program, which includes a variety of video courses on drawing and painting, weekly live lessons, weekly critiques as part of the Members Minute, and a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers. Everyone starts out with a trial, so if you want to check out the program, I'll leave a link in the description below. You can also check out 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free. Again, I'll leave a link for that in the description below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? We cover a broad variety of drawing and painting media and subjects here on this channel. Thanks again for watching, and as always, I wish you all the very best in your artistic success.